Welcome to the IRS Whisperer Podcast. This podcast is designed for tax professionals with a spin toward IRS representation. My name is Dan Hem, and I'm a CPA CTR. New episodes will drop weekly on Thursdays. Each week we'll be giving you exciting material to help the tax pro in their tax practice. That's assuming you can say exciting and taxes in the same sentence. On the IRS Whisperer Podcast, each episode will cover 3 different areas of a tax practice. We will present the marketing moment, which will cover various topics in marketing or sales to help you generate more clients and revenue in your business. The world of practice management will give you suggestions on how to better run your tax practice. We will also cover our technical time that will cover some of the latest changes or tips, tricks to help you in handling your IRS representation case. So I'm so glad you are here and hope you enjoy the show. Now, on to today's episode. Welcome to the podcast. Today I want to talk to you guys about newsletters. Now, newsletters is something that you can use in your practice, and it can be actually a good source of not only marketing opportunities, but an opportunity for you to get referrals. Now, I personally like direct mail paper newsletters. I still, if you will, old school. I enjoy getting that newsletter in the mail that you can hold in your hands and you can take around and read. Now, in most cases, most newsletters that I get, I also have the opportunity sometimes to even download them in the terms of being able to actually see them on the computer. If I need to travel, sometimes that's easier, or if they're not too difficult to scan in and then keep in a PDF format, I will do that as well. But the paper newsletter is a great source for you to promote not only your business, but potentially even the business of others. So if you have a practice where you have other business clients that are, always looking for referrals and new business, then it's a great way to promote your clients. If you are in networking groups or you have other business associates that send you referrals that you would like to promote, that's another opportunity to promote them. I always had in my newsletters, I had the client of the month column, and I rotate that around with different clients. And a lot of clients really appreciated that. They really enjoyed being a part of my newsletter and always thanked me. And so there's always that extra piece that, if you will, you're adding some extra goodwill, extra grace for that your chances are they're not going to get that with another practitioner. So with the paper newsletters, the good thing to write about is don't write all about tax or audit or whatever it is that you do. Do not write all about technical issues. Write, include some quotes, include a recipe, include something about health stuff, include a joke, something that's funny, include something that will inspire them, a good article on a story about somebody who triumphed over some, issue or problem that they had. So the newsletter can be something that you actually send to them that they look forward to. Now there's newsletters that I really look forward to, and there's some that I just like, that it's not that exciting in terms of the newsletter. So just be mindful of what it is that you're including in there. And also don't forget to be personal with it. So if you have something that's going on in your life, that you've got a child that did something special at, in elementary school, or a grandchild that did something, or the birth of a grandchild, the wedding of a child, any number of things, even a good fun vacation that you did. If you can include pictures, it's even that much better, because people, that's another way for them to make connections with you, to get to know you. And the more they get to know you, the more that they feel comfortable in trusting you. And when they become that way, they actually become sort of like your friend without really necessarily always being your friend and hanging out with you. And I'm sure many of you have clients that you feel that are friends or are close friends. In fact, some of them are probably even family. But you want to make sure that you're making that personality connection. There is the personality and copy is what they call it. You want to make sure that in your writing that you're bringing out your personality. You're getting to know, people are getting to know you by what you write. And when they feel like they know you, there's a connection that happens, especially if it's stuff that they can relate to. stuff that they can either aspire to or stuff that they've done themselves. And so like, for example, I talk about my grandson. We have our first grandchild. He's now nearing 2 years old here in a couple of months. My daughter is expecting in November for our second grandchild. And so, when I talk about stuff like that, and, there's other practitioners that have been around the block like I have, and, are now in that experiencing that, they can relate and connect to that. So it's the things that you need to talk about. Now, don't also discount the email newsletter. Now, email newsletter is nice because you know and can see the better response. Because if you use a customer relationship manager that tracks your email, it'll keep track of your statistics. It'll let you know how people are responding. And if you put something in there, and it's always best, whether it's paper or email, do something that tries to get them to elicit a response. Ask them questions. Ask them to communicate back to you, preferably in some form or fashion, like giving you a Google review or sending you an email back and replying. There's a number of things that can be done, but this is a way that you can see. Now, in an email, it's easy because you can say, hey, what are you doing? What's going on in your life? Any number of types of questions that you can have, especially if it relates to the topic in which you're sending out the email. Your clients love to hear from you. And the more that you can communicate that with them, the better it's going to be. Because, if you're the normal 1040 tax practice type of tax shop, then what happens is, normally they come in, they do the tax prep. They're usually there, either as much as a few days, a few weeks, a month, that from the beginning to the end of the contact that you have with them. And then they don't hear from you again for another year. And so the more that you can make those contacts, or touches as it sometimes is called, that you send them a paper newsletter once a month or once a quarter, either one is better. As long as you're doing something, it's better than nothing. So send that newsletter. There's many services that you can use and hire to do that service. And then the same thing with the emails. There's a number of services that you can use to write emails. You can even use your friend ChatGPT to write emails. They don't have to be long either. They don't have to be a dissertation. You're not going to write 5,000 different articles. You're going to have maybe one or two topics that you want to talk about in the newsletter. You can send it as often as every week to maybe even every other week, and probably no less than once a month. Again, the more the touches you can have, the better that it's going to be. So the point is that when you have these touches, then your clients connect with you, they relate to you, they feel that you care, whether you do or not. Hopefully you do. And so what ends up happening is that there's a lesser of a chance for them to leave, especially if there's some mistakes. I mean, we make mistakes. We all do. Hopefully you to keep your mistakes to a minimum. But when you do make that mistakes, as long as it's not some big egregious type of situation, chances are people will have some built-in grace. And as long as you know to handle it properly, then they will come back. And now you're starting back at ground zero and you got to build that grace up again. But if you do it right, then that is what helps you keep those clients and keep those long-term, because it's always cheaper to keep a client than it is to go and get a new client. So I highly recommend that you consider looking at using newsletters if you're not already. And again, many of you are, it's easy to send an email newsletter. The more challenge becomes the paper newsletter, because you've got to create it, you've got to prepare it, you've got to mail it, and then the cost of sending it out. And then how do you do all of that? Are you using a service, or are you actually hiring maybe slave labor of kids, grandkids to, stamp, fold, stuff the envelopes, or tab it if you're going to send it directly in the mail that way? Because that's what we used to do when I first started my practice. It was a way to save a few bucks, and I would send the newsletters. So we would fold them. We would then, because we'd have to fold them, we'd have to label them, we'd have to stick the stamp on them, and then we'd have to put tabs on the side and on the top so that it would open up or tear up in the process of going in the mail. So just make sure that you follow a good process, you write good information. I'd love to hear what it is that you do, or if you have questions on how to go about doing this, feel free to reach out to me go out to the taxresolutionacademy.com, and you can find my contact information there. And I'd love to hear from you in how that works. Now, let's talk about a practice management topic. So one of the things that I mentioned a few weeks ago is always about getting paid, getting good fees. So one topic, I just recently did a talk to my local CPA chapter, and I taught them basically over 3 hours. I taught them about installment agreements, about offer and compromise, and intro to exam. And when I talked with them, the one thing that always keeps coming up that I always want to make sure to reiterate to practitioners is that when you prepare a tax return, and hopefully you're using engagement letters, and if you're not, you really should. If you're using a professional liability insurance company, which again, hopefully everybody has one, there's plenty out there, and they're all different rates based on your experience and stuff. So go out and find a company. Usually if you're associated with a major group like say the AICPA or the NAEA, NATP, they all have an association with some professional liability insurance company, and they can refer you to one or more companies that you can go and get quotes. And now the one nice thing is about most, I can't say all, but most of all of these companies have standard engagement letters that they can give to you. So you download them and then you can review them. Now you should edit, adjust them accordingly, and then also have an attorney look at them, because you want to make sure that they meet your state requirements. So when you have that review, then they'll let you know, you can't say this here in the state of Florida or Nebraska and California and New York all have a lot of different rules in regards to different things. So you need to make sure that engagement letter has the information that you're looking for. Now, my engagement letters, before I sold my practice, my engagement letters was about 12 pages, and it was 9 pages, kind of the core. And then I had a 3-page addendum, and the addendum was really more disclosure things about, hey, we use online cloud services, and just various different things about stuff like that they needed to be aware of and wanted to make sure they're mindful of. But I always made sure that I got a signed engagement letter before we completed a return. Now, how you handle it is completely up to you, whether you do the engagement letter and have everybody sign it before you get started, or you do it after the fact, because that's how I did it. We do the returns, and then they'd sign the engagement letter with the 8879, then pay us for the second half of the service, because I always collected a retainer up front, a 50% retainer before, and I started doing that for all my clients, which helped put some skin in the game. It helped with cash flow for me, and it did a lot of great things for me there. But the point I want to make here is that when you are done with the return, they have signed the engagement letter, they've signed the 8879, they've paid you for your service. Let's just go with those assumptions for right now. And when you get to the end, and now you are done with everything for them, your engagement letter should basically say that once there is delivery of the return, then that engagement terminates. That means, and it should also state in there somewhere, usually the standard language in regard to the professional liability companies will basically state that, hey, this doesn't, if your return gets audited, if you get notices, if you owe money or anything of that nature, then that doesn't count as part of this engagement. That would be engaged separately. So what ends up happening is when you are done with that return, you are done. That's it. So you've been paid for that service. Now, if your client needs to get into a payment plan, I don't use the Form 9465. That is a basically separate engagement. They pay me a separate fee. And in many cases, I've gotten paid the same, if not more, than what I charged in a fee for the tax prep. And so they would pay me to get them into a payment plan. Now, if they obviously needed a partial payment plan, currently non-collectible, offer and compromise, if I found that they qualified for that, then obviously they would pay me more money for that representation. But that is a separate engagement. You get paid separately. it is not part of your tax prep, and don't make it that because you're leaving money on the table. You are providing an extra service. It takes time. You take time out of your day to do continuing education. So you take the time to have that knowledge and experience, and that has a value. So don't devalue it by using the Form 9465 that has like 6 data points on it that they say, I paid you $500 or $1,000 or whatever it is for that, or even if it was $100 or $250, it looks like I'm paying you that much money for something that was so very simple and easy. And I'm not going to lie and say that it's not. It is something that they can do for themselves. I tell most people all that all the time, but they want to pay me for it, then that's perfectly fine. I will be happy to do it, but I will not do it for free. Now, the second scenario is that when you file that return, and then usually inevitably what happens is about a year or so later, your client, some clients will get that CP 2000 notice, that wonderful document matching notice that says, hey, you didn't include something on your tax return. And so what happens in that situation is that is a separate service and an engagement. Okay, so if they want you to reply, if they want you to deal with it, then that is a separate fee for you to do so. So don't include that. It's not part of your tax prep. The only time that you don't charge for something like that is if it turns out you look in your files and you like, oh crap, they gave me that document. I had that in my files. And unfortunately, I've had that occasionally happen to me. But more often than not, they come in with the CP 2000 notice and it's something that they left off. They forgot that retirement distribution, forgotten, I'm using air quotes. And they inherited a brokerage account. I've had that happen. The unsophisticated person who's never had a brokerage account themselves, they never thought about it, and their parent died and they left them the account and they were dealing with it, but they never put 2 and 2 together that there was something that needed to be dealt with on the tax return because they've never had to do that before. So those are some of the more common type of situations and scenarios. Sometimes, you leave off the amount that was on the dependent care on the W-2. And if they didn't give you the dependent care information, then, your system's not going to give you a diagnostic for that. But if you put it in there, it obviously should. Now, another instance that could be, in my opinion, could be your fault is you should be always reviewing the prior year returns, especially on new clients. Okay, always look at their prior year returns, look at what was included, think about the situations that are involved with the taxpayer in this particular situation. So like you got an elderly taxpayer who is over the age to start taking the required minimum distribution, so their RMD. So they're going to take that RMD, they should be taking the RMD, and you've seen it either on a prior return, or you should ask the question, did you take it? And then sometimes that prompts them, oh, I forgot to take it, or B, oh yeah, I forgot to get you that document. That one didn't come in the mail. That's why you should have a questionnaire that you ask for these things. And not only that, but, offering charging for additional services like this, that when we talk about the newsletters and you ask questions, so you're doing it on paper and your email and you're asking questions, then what happens is your clients are more likely to start asking you questions, things that obviously you can charge extra for. Now, I always told my clients and said, hey, if you call me and you've got that something that I can answer in a 5 or 10 minute, 20 minute call, then typically I don't normally charge. If it's not something I know off the top of my head or it's a longer conversation, then I will let them know, hey, this is something that would take longer. And I either need to do research, or we need to have this kind of conversation, or I need to do a calculation projection. I want to sell my rental property. Do you have any idea what kind of gain I would have? And it's not as simple as just having a 5-minute conversation and doing the calculation. Now, could many of you probably do that? Yes, but your time is money, so don't devalue it. If they're taking up your time, they need to pay for that service. And if they don't want to pay for it, then that's fine. That's on them. Because if they want to get the kick in the pants later and realize that, oh, I didn't realize I was going to have that much in tax. And it's like, well, I offered you the opportunity to come to me and talk to me about that. And if you would have paid me the, $250,000, $500,000 to do that calculation, then you would have known well in advance, and now you wouldn't be caught basically, getting hit with a 2x4 upside the head. So make sure that you are getting paid for your time. Your time is valuable because, how many of you have ever had that day where you've sat at the office, you've been there 8, 10, 12 hours, and you go home, you're driving home, hopefully it's still in the daylight, but you're driving home, and then you realize, what the heck did I do today? I know I've had many days like that. And, you sit there and you rack your brains and you realize that, I did that, and I worked with that client, and I had that client on the phone, and you realize that, that was probably about 2, 3, maybe 4 hours. What did I do with the rest of my time? So, when you realize that, and if you realize that you want to get a practice, so for example, you want to earn $500,000 in your practice for the year, and you want to work, say, the normal 2,080 hours. Now, I know most of us don't do that when you factor in tax season or the second tax season, but if you were to work the 2,080 hours, that means you have to earn $250 an hour for an 8-hour day for the entire year in order to earn that $500,000. Now, obviously, if you are working more hours, then that rate actually goes down a little bit. But what would it be? $200 an hour? How many of you are actually charging $200 an hour? Are you getting $200 an hour? You'd have to look at that and see if what you're charging, whether you're charging by the form, you're charging by the hour. I mean, if you're not charging $200 an hour, well, then chances are you're not going to get to that level unless you have more clients that are being handled and managed by other people in your practice. So you need to make sure that you are getting paid for everything that you possibly can do. Now, obviously, you don't want to necessarily nickel and dime for everything because, many people get upset, and that's why they don't go to attorneys. And you want to foster an atmosphere. This is what I always do. You foster an atmosphere in which you want clients to come to you as opposed to going to their brother-in-law or going to somebody else to try to find that answer that gives them the wrong answer. And so I always tell them I don't do the per second billing like most attorneys do, obviously joking about that. So, but attorneys they're required to have 8 billable hours in most firms in order to leave. And most of them have to work 10, 12 hours in order to get 8 billable hours. And you want to make sure that you have as many billable hours as you possibly can from you and from your staff when it comes to the work that you're doing. So if you bill them for this extra work, for these notices that they bring in, for collection situations, if they make referrals for you, then all of that's going to work better for you. And just make sure that you use engagement letters and use separate engagement letters for the separate work that you're doing. Again, let me know what you're doing. I'd love to hear how you handle these aspects. Unfortunately, most practitioners usually don't charge extra for it, and you're leaving money on the table, money that people will gladly pay you for because, as I said to CPA chapter group, that most people are willing to pay you more to deal directly with the IRS in a collections or exam notice situation than they really want to pay you for a tax return. The tax return is the necessary evil. When it comes to collections or exam, the IRS they feel like is coming after them. Many people are, they're afraid that they're going to lose sleep. They're afraid they're going to throw them in jail. They're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing. Sometimes it's best that you do it for some clients because they get mad because it's government, it's the IRS. And so it's best in your interest to be in front of them. So again, let me know what's going on with you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day today. Talk to you later. Thank you for listening to our show. We hope you received some valuable information to help you in your tax practice. The IRS Whisperer is sponsored by the Tax Resolution Academy. If you have any questions you'd like to see addressed on the show or comments to help us make it better, please reach out to us on social media. Follow us or download our shows on your favorite podcast app. Tune in to our next episode where we'll give you some more exciting information to help you grow your practice.